the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. This Sunday, Venezuela's parliamentary election progresses normally. Since early morning, Venezuelans go to the 14,200 authorized voting centers. While waiting for their return, citizens highlight the need to renew the parliament to respond to the needs of the people. On this occasion, about 21 million people are called to elect 277 deputies. Sunday's parliamentary elections are being held with biosecurity measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. In the framework of the Republic Plan, 250,000 members of the Bolivarian National Armed Force safeguard the democratic process. And now we receive in From the South to Dr. Surland, who is an analyst, a political analyst and international advisor. In this case, he's present in the Venezuela's parliamentary elections. Dr., be welcome in From the South.
Hi, Gladys. This is a very real honor for me to be here with you guys and to be able to share my impressions about the Venezuelan elections with the TeleSUR audience.
Thank you to be here. So we can call and we can talk a little bit about the electoral ambiance. How do you see, how do you can describe for us how is going the electoral day in Venezuela?
It is very important to point out that this is not just a National Assembly election. The first thing we need to point out about it is that it is an election about peace, about dignity, about people going out to choose between peace or war. The opposition is trying to push people by force, threatening people to not go to vote because they have a war agenda, the imperialist agenda. But the Venezuelan people, the brave people of Venezuela, are going out in mass to vote and to vote with their heart because they want peace and because they know that there is no other future for their children, for their people in general, than the Venezuelan revolution. Otherwise, it would be to fall into the really dirty hands of the opposition forces and imperialism.
Dostar, we have another question for you. In this case, what will mean, in your opinion and your criteria, what will mean a majority of government seats, allies of the government, and what will mean, in the other case, in the opposite hand, what would mean a majority of opposition seats in the parliament for Venezuelan people?
It is very important to identify what is the U.S. imperialism role into international conflicts, how they justify military interventions, and otherwise trying to sabotage other governments, to impose sanctions, to impose blockades. Why do they do that? And why aren't people in the United States reacting strongly against it? Or why, even in spite of a strong reaction internally and internationally, they continue doing so? Because they try to hide their dirty tricks and their dirty wars with legal bindings, quote unquote legal bindings. What it means is that they try to find ways to justify their oppression, their wars, and their illegal sanctions and blockades against countries like Cuba, like Venezuela, and so on and so forth. I mean, you can name any country which is trying to liberate from imperialism, and they have been subjected to terrible conditions. And in this case, we have a situation which is very special because these were supposed to be just elections for a new national assembly. So what is it now that's different about the Venezuelan national assembly elections? First of all, that the US is using the current National Assembly as the legal tool to implement their policies against the war policies against Venezuela. So the current National Assembly has become an instrument of the United States. And that's the way that they justify before the people that they have to do things like sanctions, they have to confiscate Venezuelan oil and corporations, international corporations, they have to steal our money, and they have to impose sanctions and punish in general all our Venezuelan people, because there is a National Assembly that they use as a tool to justify that. And they name, because it was not Guaido who self-named himself president. It was the United States and the European Union who named him, who told him to go to a square in Caracas and to raise his hand and name himself president, because he was an instrument of their policies. So it is the United States and the European unions who are trying to pretty much establish what's legal and what's illegal by passing the international law, by passing all the agreements between countries. It's them who are trying to impose us what's legal and what's illegal. If it is something that goes against their interests, against their corporate interests, then it's illegal. If it is something that benefits them, that benefits their corporations and their war machine, then it is perfectly legal. It doesn't matter what it is.
Indeed.
So that's the first point.
Yes. So that's
now the second point. I'm sorry. Let me finish with this second point very shortly. Is that the second point that makes this election different is that President Nicolas Maduro said, if we lose this election, then I will resign. So if we have a majority on the National Assembly, we can implement, first of all, we defeat the international strategy of the imperialism, and we pretty much unmask the strategy that they were trying to implement to impose sanctions, to blockade us, and all those so and so. Then there is an impact at the internal level, because that in turn leaves the control of the National Assembly and all the new policies that we want to implement, with the possibilities for people to really make deep changes in Venezuelan society and to pretty much implement a new revolution within the revolution, which is what we are trying to do right now. And in case the opposition gets a majority in the National Assembly, which I doubt, well, it's part of the democratic game. It's part of what we are risking, what we are pretty much, we are not trying to force people to vote for us, or we are not trying to make the opposition to pretty much play just a role of opposition. We are letting them. In fact, they won the 2015 election, and that's what they do. That's what they did. They implemented all these bad policies against the country. So if the opposition controls election, it means that we have a fair electoral system, that we have a system that is really democratic, and that we are going to still give the fight to not allow them to continue implementing policies against the country. I have several more points to make, but I'll let you ask the next question.
Okay. Dostar, we have a last question for you. And what do you think, under your consideration, why the opposition parties are calling to abstention in these parliamentary elections?
This is a very important point, and that's what I wanted to precisely make the TeleSUR audience aware of. The opposition is trying to implement a policy similar to what the contrast with the imperialism at that time implemented the policy through John Negroponte, Elliot Abrams, what's the name of this colonel? I don't remember. But it was the contra that they formed in Honduras to attack Nicaragua and to make the life of Nicaraguans that were subjected to sanctions, blockade, also at that time, to miserable conditions. I had the opportunity to be in Nicaragua at that time, before Violeta Chamorro's election, when she won the election at that time in the 1990s, 1989, 1990, I don't remember exactly the date. And what is the difference now? They are trying to implement a government in the exile. They are calling for a consultation on December 12th, which is nothing, it's just garbage. What they are trying to do is to use a mechanism to force some signatures that come from nowhere. I don't know exactly from where, but there is no verification on these signatures. And these signatures are going to ask for a referendum on President Maduro and the resignation of President Maduro. But they don't want it to, they don't want to do it through, there is a referendum aspect considering the Venezuelan constitution. They can use that, but they don't want that because their policy is war. They want to serve as an instrument of US imperialist war against Venezuela. So what they are trying to implement is a way to use these signatures, these, I don't know how many signatures they are going to present, but they are going to present some signatures, a certain amount, considerable amount of signatures, to ask for President Maduro's resignation, to name a new president. I think it's going to be this guy, Lopez, who just left the country. He was responsible for 47 people assassinated, some of them burned alive, and during some riots that he organized against the country, both in 2014 and 2017, and also a coup d'etat attempt 2 years ago, and a year ago, and they are trying to implement a way to generate the conditions for war in Venezuela. That's very dangerous. That's why these elections are so important, and that's why we are calling on all Venezuelans to participate, to don't fall into this war game that they are trying to force upon people, tricking people by increasing the prices of basic products, of everything, pretty much, by using this fake dollar that comes from the United States to impose this kind of exchange in the economy, to sabotage the electrical system, to sabotage the communication system. All these aspects have to do, the gas, the gasoline. I mean, they are trying to pretty much create the conditions for people to get so desperate that they can reproduce, what happened in Nicaragua with Violeta Chamorro.
That's very accurate from you, Duster. So we thank you for your criteria, your opinions in these parliamentary elections, and also to contribute to this broadcasting of From the South. We hope you will be with us in other times. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Earlier in Venezuela, by means of the traditional reveal, citizens were called to participate in the parliamentary elections held this Sunday. Dozens of people gathered in Caracas Electoral Square, from where they launched fireworks to celebrate the beginning of a new democratic day. Venezuelans gathered in the plaza renewed the call to their fellow citizens to go to the polls peacefully. And early this morning, the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, voted as part of the election day when about 21 million voters will elect the members of the National Assembly. She called on Venezuelan people to vote for the self-determination of the South American nation and for a National Assembly that prioritizes people's well-being and happiness.
My call is for everyone to go and vote. I've spoke to our Commander-in-Chief, Padrino Lopez, the Defense Minister of the Popular Power. The Republic plan is currently deployed and functioning in all polling stations with absolute normality, and we know that almost all the voting stations are open and ready to receive the Venezuelan people.
In Guatemala, social movements and also students marched for the third consecutive week in the capital to demand the resignation of President Alejandro Giammattei and the creation of a National Constituent Assembly. Student movements from various universities convoked the mobilization that began from the Guatemala municipality and went to the Plaza de la Constitución, the Constitution Square, where the National Palace is located. Shouting the slogan, "While there is a people, there will be a constitution," they demand the resignation of all members of the executive power. The alliance called for the establishment of a National Constituent Assembly of a plurinational character to reform the new state that guarantees fundamental rights for the population. Representatives of labor, indigenous, and campesino movements also joined the demands and called on citizens to participate in the upcoming mobilizations. Systematic assassinations of social and indigenous leaders continue in Colombia after a new massacre was confirmed this Sunday morning in the department of Cauca. Senator Feliciano Valencia and users of social networks confirmed the murder of at least 4 indigenous people in the town of Santander and also the Quilichao in the department of Cauca. According to the reports, several armed men broke into a farm and shot indiscriminately. Because of this event, there is also a person injured being treated at the hospital in Santander. And on Saturday, Colombia registered 9,642 new infections and 166 new fatalities from COVID-19. According to the data provided by the Ministry of Health, with this new figure, the country registers a total of 1,362,000 cases and more than 37,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. At the same time, authorities reported that 3,011 patients remain confined in intensive care units. Also, more than 8,000 patients have been discharged, bringing the total number of patients recovered to date to 1,249,000. This Sunday, Uruguay's Broad Front communicated the death of former President Tabaré Vázquez, who died after suffering from lung cancer diagnosed in August last year. On its Twitter account, the Broad Front wrote, With deep sorrow, we communicate the death of our honorary president, Tabaré Vázquez. His example of political integrity and unbreakable commitment to our country and the people will drive us to continue his legacy. Tabaré Vázquez was one of the most important political leaders in the history of Uruguay, twice President of the Republic and architect of the policies that allowed the people to move forward in overcoming poverty and inequality. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, if you feel so inclined, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.